If you want to ascend, you need to leave the matrix. In this video, I'm going to show you how. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I work together with an interdimensional, interuniversal, and extraterrestrial force known as Telstar, along with Archangel Michael. Now, if we want to ascend, we have to be able to get out of this, what I'll call a bubble that we call the matrix. And in order to leave the matrix, we first have to understand what it is. Now, I think there's a lot of confusion about this because sometimes people think that the matrix is actually the physical world, but it's not. The matrix is a perception or an experience or a belief in a certain reality. It exists in the mind as a perceived collective reality, which is then broadcast outwardly into physical manifestation. So let me give you an example of how this works. Let's say that you were to conduct an experiment with a group of humans from birth. What if you kept them isolated and designed a completely different reality structure around them? For example, you could raise them in kind of primitive conditions, and then you could teach them that, falsely of course, that a nuclear holocaust had destroyed almost all of human civilization. And then you could tell them that they had extraterrestrial overlords who were going to come and check on them by a certain date. And that they would be expected to prove that they could live in a certain way in order to be allowed to stay on the planet. You could explain the type of housing that these overlords wanted them to build. I mean, you could make it really, really weird, like completely different from the houses that we actually live in today. You could make up strange rituals that they would have to perform in order to please the extraterrestrial overlords. I mean, you could say, well, you have to learn to stand on your head for 5 minutes by the time you're 12 years old. And then you could tell them they have to do this every time there's a full moon, so they could stay connected to the earth and prove to the overlords that they were serious. Now, you can be sure that all of these people who were instructed to do this from birth, who were raised and trained to do exactly all of the things that I just described from birth, they would literally create this reality because they would believe that it was real. And then, here's the key point, the fact that they created it would be used as proof that it was real. But the perpetrators of this experiment would know that it was completely fake because they made it up. And that is basically the situation that we are in today. We are told by the media, by school, and by religion what reality is. And we've been told that all our lives, literally from day one, from the day we were born. And then we repeat that reality to each other as we actively participate in creating it. Once we create it, we point to our very own collective manifestation and we say to ourselves, see, this proves that this is real. But where did it all start? It started in our minds. So if we're told from birth that our purpose on this earth is to do what we're told by authority figures, go to school, get a job, reproduce, and then retire, well, then that's precisely what we're going to do. We're told that for the most part, thinking for ourselves is not allowed. See, the reason that's not allowed is because that would disturb the matrix. And we are forced into this artificially engineered reality through a system of punishment and reward. Essentially, we're often punished when we listen to our hearts, and we're rewarded when we obey outside authorities. And then we have God portrayed as a finite spiritual authority who exists outside of us and who appoints special spokespeople on this planet to keep us spiritually in line. We are collectively completely controlled by an artificial matrix of thought, which we then participate in manifesting into reality. We then point to our outward manifestation and we say, see, this proves that this is real. So you could say that a matrix is any reality that is planted in our minds from an outside source who invented that reality. It does not come from within ourselves. It has to be engineered and controlled by forces outside of ourselves. Now, let me give you another, actually kind of funny but very simple example of how this works so it's crystal clear what this is all about. Let's say, for example, that I were to tell people that, there's this new species of red bats that are flying around and could potentially enter your house and kill you. And then I say, but it's been proven by scientific experts that banana peels repel these bats. So if you always keep banana peels on your windowsills, these red bats will stay far, far away. Now here's the thing. I would already have to be perceived as an authority figure in order for people to believe this. And let's say, for example, that the official scientific community came out with this story publicly. There would be a run on bananas like you have never seen. People everywhere would be putting banana peels on their windowsills. And then miraculously, there would be no red bats anywhere. People would then claim that, wow, the banana peels really worked. And they might even go after people who did not put banana peels on their windowsills, as endangering the entire neighborhood by tempting the red bats. Maybe authorities would even have to go house to house inspecting windowsills to make sure that everyone was complying for the safety of the greater whole. Hold on a minute. Something about this is starting to sound a little familiar. Does this remind you of anything? Anyway, you kind of see where this is going. So how do we break free of a collective matrix that the whole world believes in and is collectively manifesting as a result of that belief? See, it works like a vicious cycle. You're born into the previous manifestation of the matrix by the generation that was born before you. Everyone points to that manifestation and says, see, this proves that the matrix is real and that is why you must believe it. And you're not able to argue with that because you're given no education that enables you to do so. And even if you did argue with it, you'd just be called crazy. So where we tend to mess up with our ascension process is we sometimes think that ascension happens from inside the matrix. It doesn't. So when you understand what the matrix is, it will be easy to realize that there's no ascension possible from inside that reality. And that's because ascension and evolution are not part of that planned matrix. Now, the perpetrators of this current matrix want to stay in total control of our beliefs. That way they can control us and they can completely control our reality. So the first thing you need to do to break free of the matrix is to see it for what it is and understand how it gets created. It's important to understand that it's artificial and it's false. It doesn't matter that everyone is manifesting it. It was still created artificially and is being induced from the outside. But the great thing right now is that the light of ascension is giving us an opportunity to see it for what it is. So when we say that the matrix is collapsing, what we really mean is that our belief in it is collapsing. The mass awakening that we see happening across the planet is people waking up and realizing that the matrix that they believed in all along was fake. But here's what we need to be aware of. The controllers are in the process of replacing the old matrix with a new matrix. And the new one is going to be the AI matrix. So yes, the old matrix is collapsing, but it's happening to make way for a newer, more sinister matrix. So we want to be very, very careful that we do not fall for the new one. Right now, we're in an in-between transition phase. So this is actually the perfect time to free ourselves and free our minds. The old matrix is collapsing. The new one has not really been put together yet. So this in-between time is like a beautiful window that allows us the opportunity to free ourselves. Now, the controllers are trying to keep us completely distracted with fear and violence because they do not want us to notice any of this. But one of the things that's happening with this old matrix breaking down is that a lot more light is coming in to illuminate our minds. And the controllers are really kind of losing control temporarily because they too are in this in-between phase. It's very risky for them to be taking apart the old one and creating a lot of violence and chaos to distract us while they build the new one. That's a risky place for them. Certainly it is. It's kind of like this. It's like if we were in a prison that was really old and it was being taken apart in order for a new, more secure prison to be built, there would be a period during that breakdown when escape would become much more viable. And that is what we want to take advantage of right now. We can see that the light is pouring in. We can see that the controllers are struggling to hang on to their power. So now is the time to break free permanently and connect with our true selves and with our hearts. See, ascension always happens from within. It's not a process where you just sit there and you wait for some higher force to raise you up. So the timeline split is very much about who is going to be shifted into the next new matrix and who is going to break themselves out of this mental prison and put themselves on a path of natural evolution. Ascension is really a matter of individual effort. Each person is responsible for their own evolution or for the lack thereof. Now, the reason that I always talk about having an extraterrestrial perspective is because that's what takes you out of the matrix. It can reconnect you with your ability to see what is going on from a cosmic perspective and from the perspective of your heart. See, your choice is actually very simple. So you are either going to leave your mind connected to the matrix, or you're going to free your mind from the matrix and reconnect it to your heart, which is what it was actually designed to do. See, the simple truth is this: our minds were not designed to be connected to an artificial matrix where we can be completely controlled. Instead, our minds were meant to function in union with our hearts, which is what would enable us as a humanity to create expressions of beauty and of love. It's only when our minds are firmly connected to our hearts, as nature intended, that we will be able to advance to a much more highly evolved civilization. So just to encapsulate this in its simplest form so it's really easy to see and understand, think about it this way. Our natural design is such that we are meant to be centered in our hearts. Our hearts are literally our center of intelligence. The reason for that is because our hearts are directly connected to the source that creates and sustains the entire universe. So it is from our hearts that we are connected to everything in the cosmos, and we have access to profound levels of intelligence and creativity from our hearts. Now, from there, our minds are meant to be connected to our hearts, so that intelligence, that broad mass intelligence that we have access to, can literally come from our hearts, enter our minds, and be illuminated and translated into a creation that pertains to whatever planet we're on, to whatever reality or dimension we are in. So that's what it looks like when we are living from our natural state and our natural alignment. Now, where things get messed up is when you introduce a matrix that is fake, that is artificial, that is created from outside sources, and our minds get plugged into that matrix and thereby controlled by that matrix. And then we start creating, not from our hearts, not from our natural design. We start creating, because see, our minds are not plugged into that anymore. Now our minds are plugged into this outside artificially induced scenario that could be as crazy as those first examples I gave you. I gave you crazy examples intentionally so that you would see how easy it would be to literally get people to do anything if you can get their minds hooked into the matrix. And that's the situation on this planet. We are hooked into a very, very bizarre, very negative, very destructive matrix. And because that's where the collective mind is connected into, is attached to, the people on this earth can be controlled by these outside forces that cause us to literally create the reality, whatever reality they want us to create. So I'm not going to mention anything going on in the world that I am not allowed to say here, but we all know a lot of the stuff that's going on, and you can see how powerful it is when you connect the collective mind into an artificially invented fake matrix. You can literally get people to do just about anything. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand what a matrix is, how to free yourself from it. You've got to be able to see what it is. You've got to be able to understand how it works. And then it's so much easier to just break that connection, reconnect your mind to your heart the way you were designed to function. And then everything opens up and you have the opportunity to ascend and evolve in the way that you were naturally meant to ascend and evolve. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found this information valuable for your ascension process. And if so, please give this video a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think would benefit from this information. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I am here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday with all new videos. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy, and I so look forward to seeing you in the next video. Namaste.